Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 77, recording on Monday, April 21st. It's draft week. We're finally here, and I have a guest for you today to talk about it. His name's Jordan Reid. He works for ESPN. I gave him my mock draft for him to react to my picks, and then he gave me his 4 players and explained why. So it was a very fun conversation. Think you guys will really enjoy this. As always, if you're new here and you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, hit the little like. It helps us out a ton, so really would appreciate that. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, you can hit the follow button and rate and review and give us as many stars as you please, because it helps us out as well. This show is presented by First Resource Bank. It is a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area. They've got branches all over the place. It's run by Vikings fans who are avid and very curious about this draft the same way you are. So please go check out First Resource Bank. The link to their branches and information on how to set up an account is below. We're locked and loaded at The Athletic. Like I said, the mock draft that I did, my final one on Monday, April 21st, is at The Athletic with about 1,500 words of explanations on the picks and the players and why it made sense, and even some players mentioned throughout who might be available, who might be of interest. So I recommend that because it's probably as loaded of a primer as I can possibly give you on what might happen Thursday through Saturday in what is, it's 100% going to be exciting. It always is, even with 4 picks, and I can't wait to have that thing here. We will be reacting on Thursday night / Friday morning, depending on what happens, just as best we can. So stay tuned to the show at all of the feeds, specifically YouTube, but appreciate you guys being here. And without further ado, let's hop into this conversation with Jordan Reid of ESPN. All right, Jordan, welcome back to the show. You are ready for a SportsCenter hit, but you are taking some time to hop on and talk some Vikings. I appreciate you doing it, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, man. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, I had this idea kind of late last week, first to have you on, but second, knowing that I would have kind of my final Vikings mock selections for Monday, thought it'd be cool to just give you the picks that I took and have you give some thoughts on the player, on the selection, on the position, and all of that. And then I knew you told me you were going to have your 7-round mock run Monday, so it kind of works perfect. We'll run through my 5 picks. It's 5 for me because I made a trade. You only had 4 because you took at the correct picks and made it probably much easier, even though a 7-round mock is not easy. But we'll get right into it at the top. I mean, I had a hard time with it because I do think a trade back is possible, and I wanted to represent that. In doing that, I traded back 2 spots with the Rams, thinking that maybe the Rams come up for a tackle or potentially quarterback. Probably not, but that in my own rationale, that's the way I explained it. And I took Gray Zabel with that pick, the North Dakota State interior offensive lineman. For me, Gray seems like, the type of guy who could fit with some of their zone schemes, zone running schemes. He's athletic. It sounds like he's just like all about ball and farming. So for me, it just made sense. But what do you think about that? First, the trade back, kind of at a small value for an extra 4th, and then the Zabel pick. How does that hit your ear?
No, that's great. I love it. And I think he's a player that's going to be really high on their board just because I don't know how fired up they are about Blake Brandel going into the season as the unquestioned starter. And we've seen they've been really aggressive with remodeling this offensive line. And, I mean, we've talked about it. I didn't predict them replacing Garrett Bradbury at center. I thought that would be fine going into another year with him, especially with him being on the final year of his deal. But they were really adamant about fixing the interior spot. So I just don't see them being fired up about fixing 2 of the 3 and not fixing the last spot, which is that left guard spot. But the thing that I love the most about this pick is that you not only have your left guard, entrenched starter in my opinion, but if the Ryan Kelly signing doesn't work out, you have a guy that's an option as your center now of the future that could take over right away. But with him, he could play all 5 spots. I think he's an interior guy without question, but you did a good job of projecting of where he could go just because I don't know if he's going to be on the board past 28 just because Detroit would happily take him with their need at guard. So this pick makes a lot of sense to the Vikings with Zabel.
So I was going to ask about that. You had Zabel at 28 to the Lions. Yeah. There have been a lot of mock drafts nationally where, I mean, I'll see him even as high as Seattle, I believe at 18, like the Bengals. I mean, for me, and he's a guy, you were down at the Senior Bowl in Mobile. I did not go this year, but I know – I mean, he blew away that week. It sounds like just talking to some of the evaluators I know, and I mean, you can even see it in some of the clips that people post. I mean, he's in one-on-ones just looking like he absolutely belongs and probably one of the most impressive players down there. But for me, in, trading back 2 spots to select Zabel, a part of me was like, I can't go back further than that to 30 or to 33 and 34 and expect to get a player like that. It sounds like from your perspective in Detroit would be hot and heavy, but my question is even like, do you think there's a chance he's not even there at 24?
Yeah, I think it's possible. And as you mentioned, I think he could go as high as Seattle at 18. I don't see him going at any point before that, but this could be a draft of surprises. Frankly, I think it is going to be a draft of surprises. So if he goes like inside of, 11 to 16 or 17, like that wouldn't surprise me either. But I don't know if he's going to be on the board there for Minnesota at 24. It wouldn't surprise me if he's not there on the board. But now I think another interesting name to mention if they do want to trade back, top of the second round or, with the Chiefs or the Eagles or anybody like that, Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State. I think that's another intriguing name. And I wish I could be a fly on the wall when they're ranking their guard prospects just because I would love to see how closely graded they have those 2 guys.
Yeah, those 2 for me are fascinating. I mean, the other one, Tyler Booker from Alabama, like I've people have asked me relentlessly, like, does he fit with what they want to do? Is he more of like the, gap scheme, downhill, probably like block for Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry type of vibe? But I totally understand some of that perspective. I guess part of me has also thought, like, if he has a strong anchor and you feel good in pass protection, knowing that you throw the ball 60% of the time and also have a roster that can potentially win in the next couple years, like, could that be intriguing? So I wanted to ask you, is like, how do you stack those guys of the Booker, Zabel, Donovan Jackson? I mean, Kelvin Banks, I don't know if there's any chance he ever gets to 24 in this draft, just given his age and potential to play tackle. But like those 4 potentially fitting on the offensive line, if that's the route they go, how do you stack up those guys?
And that's the tough part for us, honestly, on the media side, just because when we're ranking our prospects and ranking our big board, we're not tailor-making it for specific schemes. So we're really more so matching up the traits, and really it comes down to who you like the best. And they're very different as far as all 3 of them, in my honest opinion, just because Booker is more so your guy that wins in a phone booth, really good short area quickness. The anchor is outstanding, but he's just not really catered to win consistently in the zone scheme. If you're asking him to consistently play outside of that phone booth and climb to the second level, that's just not his game. But if you ask him to be a bully in the phone booth, now that's where he's at his best. So I don't think he's specifically a great fit in KOC's offense, but like what we have seen, they just want guys that can be stout at the point of attack. So if Booker is there, and then you have the connection with J.J. McCarthy, both of them being teammates in high school at IMG Academy, if you pass over Booker, I think J.J. is going to bring that up to them quite frequently in the draft room. I'm just kidding. But I think it's really interesting. But I just see Zabel and Jackson as the better fit schematically. But they could go back to, hey, let's just take the best player and we'll cater our system and make sure that he's a fit in our scheme as far as what we want to do in the run game.
You bringing up Jackson was great too. When you said like potentially if they trade back, later in the first round, potentially early second round. I've in past iterations of what I wanted to do for today, knowing it was my last mock, like I had that one where that makes sense because then potentially you get another day 2 pick to find a defensive tackle. And that's, I'll segue into my second pick and we can talk through this because I do think if they go either interior O-line or I know you had safety at the top in your mock and we'll talk through that in a bit, but if they don't go defensive tackle at the top, it really would not surprise me to target that spot with their day 2 pick at 97 if that's where they're taking. The challenge for me was finding a player in that portion of the draft that I think really fits what Brian Flores would want. In my mock, I had Jamari Caldwell, who is this gigantic interior defender from Oregon. But then you turn on the tape, and because I'm crazy, I have a little bit, and you see some movements that I just would not expect from a guy that size. What do you think about him and potentially his fit with Minnesota and with what Brian Flores wants to do?
I think he's an awesome prospect, honestly. He's really stout at the point of attack. He can hold his ground as a run defender. He surprisingly has some nimbleness as a pass rusher as well. And that's something that I think surprised a lot of people as far as his tape this past season. He's not just this two-gapping guy that's playing the A-gaps and just swallowing everybody up against the run. No, I mean, he's penetrating into the backfield. He's being disruptive. Him and Derek Harmon, I thought, were one of the best 1-2 tandems along the interior of anybody in this year's class. But when I look at it, I just think they already have a lot of guys that are like that, whether it's Harrison Phillips, Javon Hargrave in some spots can be that space eater as well. What I really want them to get is that true up-the-field wrecking ball penetrator that can really be like early on in his career, like what Milton Williams was for the Eagles, that guy you can bring in sub packages. He not only can play along the interior, but you can rush him off of the edge sometimes. We know Brian Flores likes to have those funky looks of where he has these 300-pounders standing up and rushing and blitzing up the middle in the A-gaps. So I had him taking Omar Norman-Lott out of Tennessee, and we were talking about a little bit about him pre-show. He would be the perfect sub-package guy just because I think he could be in that third or fourth round range. So a little bit about him. He only played in 20 or more snaps, 5 of the 13 games that Tennessee played. So they just used him as somewhat of a relief pitcher this year. So he's already used to that sub-package role, and I think he could play that right away early on. Just because my biggest concern with Caldwell is that you're mostly going to get the value out of him in those early downs. They already really have the guys to do that. So I want them to get that change-up guy that they can bring in on third down, obvious passing downs. Norman Lott really fits that better.
Yeah, and he's like, some of the statistics on him, like the win rate metrics are like hard to even understand how you could have. Now, again, the sample size plays a role, but like I'll sort PFF interior defenders pass rush win rate, and it's like 18% or something, Omar Norman-Lott, which is just totally off the charts. And you watch the tape, and he is just like, I mean, he's built low to the ground, but just quick, violent. It seems like he reads the snap count very well. He's just very quick off the ball. You'd have better descriptors of it than I would. I'll ask you this, though. Like, who else in terms of other prospects that could be that type of player? Like, I don't know if Indiana's CJ West is that is he that type of guy? I mean, I love Shamar Turner for them, but I don't think he's going to be anywhere close to 97, still be on the board. But for me, like, as I was going through it, the hard part for me is which other types of guys are that, style of player.
So it's really tricky about this year's interior class just because it is a little bit top heavy, in my opinion. I think we're going to see a lot of guys come off of the board inside of that top 75 range. But after that, I believe there's a little bit of drop off. And if you're looking for those, what I call DPR, designated pass rushers outside of Norman Lott, there really isn't that one guy at 97. I think this guy's going to go a little bit later, but it wouldn't surprise me if he does go in that top 100 just because everybody's chasing for that Milton Williams type of player that they can get in the third or fourth round. And it's Aeneas Peebles out of Virginia Tech. He's undersized at about 6'1", right at 300 pounds, but explosive, really explosive. He was another guy that really stood out to me at the Senior Bowl. Nobody could block him. Like, he was so disruptive. He's low to the ground. He's not going to give you much of anything as a run defender, in my honest opinion, especially early on. He just needs to add some more mass to his frame. But if you're asking him to come in and sub-package and just rush the passer on third down or obvious passing situations, that's what he was able to do. He did it at Duke early on in his career, and he did it most notably this past season at Virginia Tech. So along with Norman Lott and Aeneas Peebles, I think they're going to have a lot of interest in him too.
Yeah, the next pick for me, I'll just segue with the fourth-round pick that I got in that first-round trade, that I'm just creating as a GM and having a lot of fun with, is a receiver, Jalen Lane from Virginia Tech, and he's a punt returner. This team, Brandon Powell has been the punt returner the last couple of years. He is a free agent, no longer on the roster, and I just from what it sounds like, I think they really would like to kind of improve that spot. I also know that Jalen Naylor is in the final year of his rookie contract. If Jalen duplicates the season that he had last year and is as healthy as he was last year, he'll probably get paid next offseason in free agency. So having another receiving option, not to mention the potential that Jordan Addison suspended early in the year, we'll see about that. But for me, Jalen Lane's just an interesting player. It's similar to defensive tackle where I was having a hard time figuring out what type of receiver would fit right here for them. I mean, like Ty Felton from Maryland's an interesting player. But what do you think about Jalen Lane? You might have been a little lower on him. I'm not totally sure, maybe not. But I've read so many of these of you guys kind of evaluations. But what do you think about him as a player? Virginia Tech receiver, punt returner.
Yeah, he's interesting. He's had inside, outside versatility for them. I think he's capable of playing both. A down the field receiver that had a lot of success vertically, as well as you mentioned, he's a really good return specialist as well, which is something the Vikings have kind of been mixing and matching with. They really haven't found that guy that they feel consistent about that. So I think if they take a guy in the late rounds, they're going to have that special team versatility, most notably as a return specialist. You're reading my notes, man. Ty Felton was definitely one that I had literally circled to talk about today. I think he would be perfect for them in those middle rounds. He got off to a really good start last year, and they had some inconsistencies at quarterback, and his stats really tapered off after the first few games or so. But he's one I think they're going to like a lot. He's really explosive, really good hands. Probably going to be a wide receiver 3 or 4 on the next level. I think that's probably where his ceiling is going to be capped at. Really good at contested situations, a really good route runner too. So if you could get him at this spot, I definitely think he would be a steal.
Yeah, the other one for me that just would be interesting, Jimmy Horn Jr. from Colorado, and I don't know how
read my
high.
Yeah,
read
my notes.
I don't know how high he would go. I don't know if he's in the fourth round range. Might be way too high for him, but if it's 5th or 6th or something like that. I mean, to me, again, it's probably similar to where to bank on him as your receiver 3 is probably asking a heck of a lot, especially at his size. But, I mean, the guy is dynamic. You just see that pretty clearly on tape. But from a range perspective, where have you kind of thought about him?
So I have a 5th/6th on Jimmy, but he's probably going to end up going in the 6th or 7th, in my honest opinion, just because after really the 4th or 5th round, NFL teams they're not huge on taking smaller receivers. And he's very small, but I've seen Jimmy twice. I saw him at the Shrine Bowl, which he played in, and I seen him at the Combine, and I was blown away by this guy, Alec. Like he moves differently. Like you see guys right away, and you've seen it with players in training camp like Jordan Addison. They're so twitchy and they move. And you're just like, whoa, that dude moves different than anybody else out here. He was one that really caught my eye. Really strong hands. The play strength is surprisingly good for how small he is. And I definitely think that's something that you need to have in your bag, especially if you're a smaller receiver on the NFL level. Has return specialist experience as well as a punt returner, as well as a kick returner too. So he's somebody that I would feel comfortable taking in the 5th or the 6th round. But honestly, I don't think he's going to go until the 6th or the 7th round, but a lot of teams are going to regret it if he turns out to be a really good player. But it's always interesting to see you're going into those all-star games really with a clean slate of some of these guys. He was one that, I watched about 3 or 4 games on him. Obviously, seeing Shador, you see him just making plays all over the field, but I didn't hone in on him really until the first few weeks leading up to the Shrine Bowl. But he was one player that I went back and studied. I was like, man, this dude moves differently, and I would be surprised, if he doesn't get drafted. But if he goes, I would be comfortable taking him in the 5th or 6th round, but I think he's going to go in the 6th or the 7th, and he's going to go on to stick on somebody's roster.
Yeah, you mentioned guys who move differently, and you said Addison, but I'll never forget, the first time out of spring practice, you're just watching him, and it was just the best way I described it was when you go, if you're go watch your cousin's Little League game or something, it's one kid is just so natural out there. That's how it was even for me at this level. All right, I'll get to my last 2. At 139, I had Brashard Smith, running back from SMU. Who is obviously, I think he could be a kick returner. He was a former receiver. I watched the Cal. I'm crazy, but I watched the Cal tape because I wanted to see Noel Williams, and they had Brashard Smith in the slot running like a fade, contested catch near the goal line. It was very impressive. And then my last pick, I think at 187, I had a guy, Za Frazier, cornerback from UTSA, who's like a lengthier guy, interesting prospect. I could just imagine Brian Flores and that crew kind of liking him. But what's your kind of evals of those two guys, and how do you think about the fit?
So I'm laughing. I'll buy you lunch if Za Frazier goes that late. If he goes after the 4th round,
Okay.
I'll buy you lunch.
That's
I think
great.
even though he's going to be a 25-year-old rookie, I mean, you're talking about somebody that's 6'3", 195 pounds. He jumped, I believe it was 38 inches at the combine. He ran in the low 4.3s as well. So that type of explosiveness, it just doesn't – those guys don't last long in the draft. And he has the ball skills and the ball production to match as well. 6 interceptions this past season. So I'll buy you lunch if he makes it past the 4th round. Hold me to that. So if he is there in the 7th round, you absolutely turn that card in very, very quickly. But I mean, we've seen the Vikings chase those big, long, fast guys that fit in the zone scheme predominantly. We saw it last year with Kyrie Jackson. Of course, the unfortunate situation happened with him, but very similar profile to Za Frazier when he was coming out. Those big, long corners that can run, then also have the ball production to match too. So he's very similar to the archetype that they have chased in years past. So I could see them having a lot of interest in him. And then also Brashard Smith. Like, if I was in a draft room with Kwesi and I was able to give a speech on one guy that I would pound the table for in this year's draft, regardless of position, it would be Brashard Smith. Like, that's how high I am on this guy. Former receiver at Miami, transitioned over to running back his first year at SMU and looked completely natural at doing it. So I have this player that I can put in the slot. I can put him in the backfield. I can use him in so many different spots. And he's a return specialist as well. So he just has so many different feathers in his cap. And I'm always of the belief that if you're taking running backs, receivers, or DBs, especially in the 5th round or beyond, they have to have special teams experience for me in order to select him. So he has that experience as a return specialist. You can use him on special teams in so many different facets. You can use him as that 3rd running back behind Aaron Jones and Mason as well. And then I really can use him as my 4th or 5th receiver, honestly, just because I can flex him out in the slot. I can use him on screens. There's so many versatile ways that we can use this guy. And we know it's slim pickings when it comes to making a 53-man roster. When you get to those back-end guys, they have to have special teams experience. So he can be my 3rd running back. He can be my kick returner. And then he can be, my 4th or 5th receiver as well. So I love the fit in Minnesota.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I just could imagine, like Kevin O'Connell, having fun with certain ways to I mean, it's really easy to squint and just be extremely excited about what would be possible offensively. I mean, especially you add another interior offensive lineman and you shore up the left guard spot. You think about this offensive line with dynamic weapons like that, and obviously J.J. McCarthy's development. Like, it's pretty easy for the folks listening to this probably to get pretty excited about what's possible. All right, let's flip over real quick to your picks. I think they're very interesting. And the first guy for me is just I'm just so fascinated by this guy. So at 24, explain your pick and talk me through your evaluation of this guy, because he's just kind of a one-of-one type athlete, it feels like.
So this was really one of the hardest picks for me in the 1st round, honestly, just because I honestly wanted to put Kenneth Grant there, but I just started to jot down the possibilities of Eman Wari with Brian Flores in so many different ways that he can use him. And I think they have a need for a young safety, honestly. Harrison Smith, I believe, is going to be 36 going into the season this year. They're pretty high on Theo Jackson for the most part, giving him the new deal. But outside of that, they don't really have any young safeties that they're really excited about. Obviously, Josh Metellus, somebody that they like quite a bit too. But just talking about somebody that has that all-around versatility that you can use as a blitzer, you can use him in coverage, you can line him up as a defensive end coming off of the line of scrimmage. So I really just started jotting down all the endless possibilities that he can be as a player right away in that secondary, and that's why I like the fit so much with him.
Yeah, safety, and I mean, it's such an interesting conversation here locally, because there are people, and I'm speaking fans, like, you hear DB and safety are just massive kind of wants from some people, and then you talk to other people, it's like, continue to fortify, supplement the trenches, do as much as you can. I mean, Eman Wari, like, I think you said it extremely well. Like, the guy, having Brian Flores be able to like put this guy in as many situations as possible. I mean, it's as fun probably of a mix as you could imagine. I guess my thing with it is I don't know how much his skill set kind of overlaps with Josh Metellus'. Or I mean, it sounds like from listening to you and just kind of reading other people, it's like there is strong belief that he can play deep, play the deep half kind of. You know, they have a lot of too high safety stuff. So you feel like even in that type of role, it would work for him.
Yeah, I believe so. And the Vikings really like to play three safeties a lot of times. And I really think that gives them that interchangeable piece. And I believe Josh Metellus is on the final year of his deal too. So you get that heir apparent guy already in the building, somebody that's obviously an upgrade physically from an athletic standpoint. Now, I don't think Eamon Warrior has quite the instincts that Metellus has. He just has a great feel for being around the ball and finding ways to come down with the ball and making tackles as well. But I believe that's a risk that you would love to take, especially with somebody that's just bigger, faster, and stronger than what Metellus is. And I know he's a fan favorite, so a lot of fans are probably going to hate me for that. But just speaking of potentially upgrading at that spot, I just think Eamon Warrior, there's so many different ways that you can utilize his role. And I could just see Brian Flores in the meeting room, in these draft meeting rooms, just seeing Eamon Warrior and just discussing the endless possibilities that he can use with him.
You mentioned kind of, being tempted to slot Kenneth Grant, the interior defensive tackle from Michigan, in this spot. I mean, what about that fit? Just, I mean, it's easy for me to kind of imagine it, but what for you? Yeah. I mean, why were you as kind of pushed to maybe want to do that? As it sounded like you were.
Well, it just comes back to the Caldwell debate that we had about earlier. I just think they already have a lot of guys that can do what he does, and he's not really any different than some of the guys that they already have on the roster. Now, would I be upset if they take Kenneth Grant? No. I think taking him makes a lot of sense just because his career would play out very similarly with the Vikings as it did at Michigan. He wasn't a starter his first 2 years, and he was a full-time starter for the first time this past year with Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, and Harrison Phillips already there. It would be very similar to kind of the clog that they had at defensive end with Dallas Turner last year with Van Ginkel and Grenard. He wouldn't be forced to play right away. Really, the first 2 years of his career, if all things play out the way that they plan to with those two big free agent signings that they had. So with Grant, he's more of a run defender early on that you're hoping to get more from as a pass rusher as he gets older and gets more reps. But I just like the upside of Eamon Warrior and being able to use him more so right away than what I would be able to with Kenneth Grant.
Totally makes sense. We talked through your second pick, Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee at 97. Your last two, give me your last two, and I kind of want to. We'll talk about DB a little bit, but I just want to hear your last two and kind of the thoughts and evals of those guys, because the guard from Kansas I had not heard of. I've done as much as I could possibly do, but give me those two.
Yeah, so it's Bryce Caboodoo from Kansas, who's had some offensive tackle guard flexibility. I always like to peg explosive testers to the Vikings just because that's something that's been consistent, and then also productive players as well. So he's somebody that I think will be a developmental guard, but I think he's just good enough to provide really good competition at that left guard spot with Brandel. And then also I didn't have any trades in my mock, which if you do trades for a seventh rounder, it gets extremely difficult just because now some teams have more picks, some teams have less picks. So
impossible.
With the Vikings, if I wasn't Kwesi's shoes, of course, best case scenario would be looking to trade back. But in this case, I think Caboodoo really fits as far as some of the things that they're looking for. He fit really well in that zone scheme too. And then I believe my last pick, if I'm not mistaken, was Jordan Hancock out of Ohio State. He's another that I think they're going to be really, really high on. I've heard some scouts that believe he could go as high as the third round. I have a fourth round grade on him, and he's a player that's been really quiet throughout the process as far as his draft stock. But the more coaches, position coaches in the NFL, and then scouts that I talk to in the NFL, they're like, man, like this dude can play. He really was the unsung hero. He played predominantly nickel for the Buckeyes, but was an explosive tester, 6'1", about 195 pounds. Really good wrap-up and finish tackler. I think he can eventually transition outside. I definitely think he's capable of doing that. But he looks most comfortable at that nickel spot. And we know with the Vikings, I think they have a void at that nickel spot that they're still looking to figure out. I think Rodgers is going to play on the outside based on some of the stuff that I have read. You would know better than me.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to look to play Rodgers on the outside, so they're still looking for that true nickel guy.
Yeah, no, I mean DB like that's the it's a fascinating conversation because I know, I mean, with free agency specifically, I mean they targeted Isaiah Rodgers. I mean Brian Flores thought very highly of him, and so to pair him with Byron Murphy, who has the flexibility, and then I mean there's still belief in Mekhi Blackman. Dwight McGlothern, who they signed in the undrafted portion last year, flashed a little bit in training camp. So it's going to be interesting to see if they go that route, where they do it and the type of player that they end up, going for. I thought you hit the nail on the head by talking, with Brian Flores having played so much man coverage in the past. I think there's an assumption often that got to find man guys, but really this system has been very zone based, very eyes on the quarterback, and very interchangeable, obviously. So again, like the type of player I mentioned, going back to watch Noel Williams, because he's a guy who played off coverage, zone type corner, competitive player. So for me, like I said, it's just going to be interesting to see if they draft a corner, where they do it, and the type of player that they take. What do you think of my 5 picks, just in general? I mean, obviously, you're buying me. I'm getting a 4th rounder in the 6th round with Frazier, the quarterback. Yeah. But just in general, like if that's how it plays out, your reaction would be what?
No, I think they'd be really happy. Just because not only did you trade back and you get more draft capital, I think just with Kwesi and the analytical background that he has, I think he's going to want more darts thrown at the dartboard. Just 4 picks, I don't think that's going to be something he's really satisfied with. But Gray Zabel, I think, will be a home run for them, just because they want to solidify those 5 spots up front. Him having his versatility at guard as well as center, he provides an immediate contributor or immediate competition alongside Blake Brandel. And now you have Brandel as depth. So he would be a great pick. And then your others I thought were really good as well. Jamari Caldwell, we've talked about him plenty. But if they do get him in those middle rounds, adding another big body along the interior, they still need one of those big run stuffers as far as a younger guy. They have some older guys already at the top of the depth chart, but getting a younger guy like that would be really good. And then getting Zy Frazier in the 7th round, of course, I'm not going to complain about that one now.
I can't wait to get lunch next year in Indianapolis when they do that. No, I'm kidding. You're on it. Is there? I mean, you said this earlier, but you're like, this draft could be full of surprises. It does feel like the closer we've gotten to this, that's kind of become more of the sentiment. Where does that come from, or is it just like a vibe that you have when you talk to certain people inside the industry in terms of where players might go?
It's a little bit of both, honestly, just because it's so much different than last year's class, just because we knew there was going to be three quarterbacks to go at the top, and we knew there was a chance that really 5 quarterbacks could go inside of the top, in the first round. I don't think anybody projected 6 to go inside of the top 12, but we knew there was 5 or 6 worthy guys that could go in the first round. This draft is much more unpredictable just because there's not a lot of consensus at the top. And I know a lot of people are projecting similar players to go to similar teams, but I think we could see quite a bit surprises, a lot of surprises at the top of the draft and then throughout the first round, just because, and I've been telling everybody this, and I've tweeted it out as well, the player that you pick at 12 overall is really going to be the same as 60 overall in this year's class. So that's what I was talking about earlier. I don't think a lot of teams are really going to be scrambling to come up the draft board, and there's going to be a lot of teams that are really fine with sticking and picking at their slot just because the quality of player is really the same in this year's class.
Yeah. That's well said. Well, I'm going to let you get out of here. You got a Sports Center hit to go do, and for some reason before
interviewing
that,
Kenneth Grant. Kenneth Grant on Sports Center today.
Enjoy that. The people watching, listening, please go check that interview out. It'll be fun. But Jordan, thanks for hopping on. It's always a good time. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. We'll catch up after at some point and go through it. But 4 picks. It's an interesting. It's an interesting place to be. Be fun to see what happens Thursday. Appreciate you hopping on, man. Thank you.
Thanks as always, Alec.
That'll do it for episode 77 of the Alec Lewis Show. Really grateful that Jordan spent some time hopping on, going through the picks prior to a segment on SportsCenter. So it was a blast to go through it. Interesting to hear his feedback, his thoughts, his expectations, and his 4 selections as well. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens, as it always is. You always wonder with some of the intel how much is straightforward, how much of it is strategy. And it'll be fun to kind of find out together on Thursday night. Like I said at the top, going to try to be reacting live Thursday night. So whether it's late at night, I mean, you guys will probably be up. I'm going to have to do some writing, but I'm willing to hop on here and do something live from the facility after talking with Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell. So stay tuned for that. Again, if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It'll make sure you get you're up to speed to all of the future shows. And then if you haven't, please go check out The Athletic. Like I said, the loaded mock draft, intel, everything I had pretty much I ran on Monday. And then we'll have some more stuff throughout the week that I can't wait to kind of unveil. So appreciate you guys being here. Thank you as always for making it to the end, and we will talk to you very, very soon.